Hi everyone and welcome to another painting tutorial. So today I'm going to show you how to paint warm flesh tones on Warhammer Creatures. So I'll be using a Cities of Sigmar Trailhound as an example of this. So over a WRAITHBONE undercoat, I'm just going to begin by applying a mix of approximately 80% Screaming Skull and about 20% LAHMIAN medium. And I'll just be doing one thin layer of this over the entirety of the miniature. And I just decided to add some LAHMIAN medium just to help smoothen out the Screaming Skull. So with the Screaming Skull now dry, I'm going to move on to a mix of XV88 and Screaming Skull 50-50 to 2 parts LAHMIAN medium. So as you can see, I already have the 2 pools of paint set up and I've just added some drops of the LAHMIAN medium and I'm now going to mix that together. And for the most part, just focusing on all of the recesses of the muscles. And if you want to thin this down further, you can either add more LAHMIAN medium or some water in that mix as well. Now as for the brushes used, for the base coat just used a cheap nylon brush, and now I've just moved on to one of my older Raphael 8404 size 3-0 brushes. So even once these brushes have lost their point, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I do tend to hold on to them. They're still really useful for doing shading details, base coating, especially on smaller details such as this. And just to mention as well, you can layer up the recesses a couple of times with this mix, and just really take your time with it. And if you do notice any lines building up, don't stress too much about that, as we will get to layering up the flesh a little bit later on. But do try and get it as smooth as you can. And when working over lighter colours, moving the paint around as quickly as you can is definitely a good option, as it will avoid getting any patchy finishes. But again, don't stress too much if that does happen. It certainly does happen on this miniature that I'm painting. But again, once we get to those steps, you'll see that it's fairly easy to go ahead and tidy up. And now moving on to a mix of XV88 and Lahmian medium. So 1 part XV88 to 2 parts Lahmian medium. I'm just going to further shade down the recesses. And now with equal parts XV88 and RHINOX hide, and just a drop of Lahmian medium. You can also add just a little bit of water as well. I'm just going to begin shading around the nose and the cheeks, just in general the mouth area. And as you can see, I did add a decent amount of water as it is quite thin. And this will also be for painting around the recesses of all of the other details that aren't flesh of the miniature, just to help deepen the recesses between those details. And now just to further shade down the face, I'm going to use ABADDON Black and LAHMIAN Medium. So a very small amount of ABADDON Black. So just looking at around 20% to 80% LAHMIAN Medium. So as you can see, just around the snout, just further darkening the recesses and adding a little bit more depth around the cheeks and also the mouth as well. And just in the recesses of the eye as well. And now I'm going to begin tidying up all of the flesh with USHABTI bone. So just make sure that you don't overlap a lot of those darkened recesses that we've just been doing. And as you can see as well, the USHABTI bone is relatively watered down. I just wanted this to be a really gradual process, and if you do need to layer it up a couple of times, just go right ahead and do that. And now just going back to the ABADDON Black LAHMIAN medium mix to just further darken the mouth area. So as you can see, I was just pointing out the details on the other side of the face that I'd already painted. And of course going to go ahead and show you how I went about painting that. So I'm going to further darken the recesses, just the deepest recesses of the mouth and around the nose with Corvus Black. And for these details, I'm using one of my newer of the Raphael 8404 size 3.0 brushes for this. As you can see, it's holding a really nice point, and you'll definitely need that with whatever brush you're using for this part. And just going over the nose with Corvus Black. And as you can see, just still with the Corvus black, just deepening the recesses around the eyes as well. And as the one and only highlight for the nose, I just decided to use some Dawnstone. So just really use this sparingly, just pick out the most raised areas just to add a little bit more detail to the nose. And now just going back to XV88, this time just on its own and relatively watered down. I'm just going to do some stippling around the mouth. Again, just avoiding those deep recesses and just adding a little bit of variety in the colour around the mouth. And now just blending a small amount of the XV88 and Screaming Skull. I'm just going to continue stipple highlighting. And I decided to keep the eyes really simple, so just using some white scar, however any white acrylic will do just fine. I'm just going to begin filling in the eyes. And as you can see, the white on this eye was a little bit too thick, so I've just gone back to the Corvus black to correct that. And now just going back to Screaming Skull, so mostly just doing some fine edge highlights here, and also some stippling across the body. Now the reason I chose stippling as the technique for this final highlight across the flesh is I wanted to give the appearance of hair. And this is a really good technique for doing that. And you can really add as little or as much as you want with this. But as I mentioned quite a few times before in this tutorial already, just really trying to avoid those deeper recesses where we spend all that time shading. Just to mention as well, I didn't actually include the nails in the tutorial, however, the final process for those was the same as the nose. And as you can see, I've just gone back to that XV88 and Screaming Skull mix. Sometimes it's really good to just take a moment and look at a model when it's either finished or close to being finished, and just see as to whether or not you want to go back and touch up any details. Around the mouth area here being a good example of that. As I just decided that it went just a little bit too dark, so that's why I wanted to go back and add some of that XV88 and Screaming Skull. And here are some photos of the completed Trailhound. So again, this flesh tone can be used on a whole variety of miniatures, so I hope you found this tutorial useful today. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe today if you haven't already, and leave a comment below of something that you might like to see me do in the near future. And I just wanted to mention as well, if you are in the UK or in Australia, there's a couple of links in the description below. It does support the channel if you purchase through the link below. So again, thank you so much for the support and for watching. I will see you again in the next one.